Hello and welcome to the Salt City Gamescast, episode 144. My name's Nick Naylor. Sitting across from me is Jared Allen.
Hi.
Hi. We do a video game podcast here. We talk about our favorite drinks, we tell stories, and we talk about video games. And we are going to do that. I just want to kind of start off by sometimes shit happens in the real world, and we don't spend a lot of time talking about that stuff. But I think both of our views, some pretty bad things happen politically in this country, and there's a lot of people that are really upset, scared, stressed. And if you believe the person that won the president his word, for good reason,
right?
And so that super sucks. And I didn't really know how to just do a podcast and pretend that it wasn't kind of looming, because it's in my day-to-day still, so, and probably will be for quite some time. But we are here. We understand that it's an absolute shit show, and we are sometimes it is nice to get some sort of a distraction from the shit.
Yeah, definitely rough going this week, obviously, in my mind. We generally try to stay apolitical here, but sometimes it's just very difficult to do that. And this is one of those situations I feel like where, I think it would be kind of disingenuous for us to not at least highlight it and talk about it. And, I think that there's a lot of soul searching that a lot of people have to do and are going to have to do in the next little bit. And to say this week was difficult would be an understatement. However, I feel like the more and more I think about it, the more I just kind of, it further solidifies my opinion that, we can't give up, and we also have to really, really focus on the things that matter and what we can control, because there's some things we just can't control. And so, I definitely do think that coming here and talking about video games is a way to kind of get your mind off of things. And I think that's important and good. But, at the end of the day, things seems pretty dire right now, but, we just got to keep on trucking, and we can't just become complacent and say, oh, well,
there we are.
Here we are.
I just had to we had to at least say something. Like the day after the election, I got on Instagram, and you just see the same, look at this quirky thing, and I'm just like, oh, man, it's a real rough sell. Yeah, you're a pretty amusing person normally, but maybe today not. But I don't know.
Yeah, social media is a fucking crapshoot, and it's hard to argue that there aren't a lot of serious problems with it and causes of serious issues in our society. But again, man, we just got to keep on going, and again, we don't really talk about this shit very often, and it's kind of hard to come up with any positives right now, in my opinion. But
I think that's the worst.
What's the alternative?
No. So we're here. We're going to do our thing, and hopefully, for the people in the Discord and everyone that enjoys it, it's some dose of normalcy for an hour and a half or so, and then you can get back to whatever the fuck the rest of the world's doing.
Yeah, we appreciate all of the people that regularly listen and engage with us on the Discord. And I will say it's okay to have different opinions and feel whatever way you feel. But yeah, we're here. We're gonna keep on going. I don't want to get too inflammatory here, so we'll keep it pretty mild.
Okay. Well, I had actually posted a picture of me having this. Is it 1792? I can't
yes.
see the label, so let me get the
1792
full proof. I had a little bit at a friend's house, and then you found a bottle. So I'm pretty stoked because I like this thing, and I still like it. It's high proof. I think it was pretty high, 56, something like that.
It is 62.
I don't think it tastes like 62. I have a Booker's that's like 64 or something, and you can really taste it in that. But the thing that stands out for me for this is that
the thing that stands out to me is you got yourself a fucking hefty pour over there, my guy.
Did you not hear the first section of this podcast? Did you do that?
There, I'm not criticizing you. You have as much as you want. You can drink that whole goddamn bottle for all I care.
I have a hard time judging how much is in these little glasses as they.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a work in progress. But where I was going with this is that this is not an expensive bottle.
No, it's
Uh,
not bad.
it's not particularly expensive, and I think it's quite good. Like dollar for dollar. A lot of times we'll talk about things that's like good, but it's a really tough thing to try to find, especially in the world of bourbon.
Hmm.
And this is not impossible to find. And it's what'd you pay? 60, $70?
No, less, like 50,
Nice. I
45,
mean, that's
$50. I don't quite remember.
that is, I mean, that's a big recommend. So I've only had this foolproof, but I'd be interested in some of the other stuff because I think there's some that's even less than that.
Yeah, so if you're a fan of weeded bourbons, this is going to be right up your alley. So if you're a fan of some of those harder to find Buffalo Trace products, the Weller products in particular, if you like that flavor profile, you like this quite a bit. So you get that really nice kind of wheat funk, which I know saying wheat funk is maybe off-putting, but it actually is a little funky if you're used to like non-wheated bourbons. But the way that it kind of presents itself to me is more sweet. It's very sweet.
Mm.
The nose in particular, it smells just super super sweet to me, and I like it quite a bit. It is hot, so you get a little bit of that burn on the back end, but I think it's a really good product, and yeah, price to quality I think is pretty high. So yeah, go check it out if you can find it. The 1792, the base line, I believe it had it like once or twice in like a flight.
Hmm.
And it was pretty inoffensive, like but it wasn't like holy fucking shit.
Sure.
And generally, because I'm a whiskey snob, I usually want something a little bit higher alcohol content. Anyways, I think that there's a lot more nuance in them, so I went with this one. But if you're in Utah, they are floating around right now. You can find these bottles fairly easily.
I think when I poured this, I wasn't factoring in that it was high proof either, but this is the road we're on.
I don't know if you can tell, but I got like just this little bit, and Nick's got like half a Glencairn over there.
It's not half.
But hey, man, shit's rough right
You know,
now, so drink up.
this is buckle up, folks. Here we go. Hey,
Woo!
the PS5 Pro came out.
Yeah,
And it showed up at my house on
launch day, Thursday.
on launch day.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of nice. Really brief impressions. I haven't really been able to dive in too far.
Mm-hmm.
But first problem, when you get I don't have an iPhone, but when you get a new phone, they are pretty good at having a pretty nice little presentation, right? Like when you open the little box, you're just like, this is a nice product. They're like, it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
People do whole whole videos about it, obviously.
Right.
Not so with this thing. They didn't even like attempt to be like have the little thing that you open and it's just like there it is. This is the Pro.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, but not the big money. It's just kind of like in a box or with styrofoam, and that's like it. And it's not obviously doesn't matter, but I was just like interesting choice.
This is the exact same. I know this because I just boxed up my original PlayStation 5, my launch PlayStation 5. The box is exactly the same as the
Okay.
launch PlayStation 5. So
That's funny.
$200 more than your base, almost $300 more than your base. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not really that big of like an unboxing guy, but it would have been cool to have like, I don't know, some sort of iconography, from Sony there in some fashion or form. But yes, it's very bare bones.
It's all throwaway. It doesn't matter. But I just was surprised because it is a pretty expensive product.
It's an extraordinarily expensive product.
Yes, absolutely. So moving on to aesthetics, I didn't realize, like I hadn't done any research. I just knew it was stronger and I was like, I'm dumb, I'll buy it. But a little smaller. It did dawn on me.
Pretty, like I would say considerably smaller.
Like and it sounds weird, but I just feel because it's smaller, it just looks a little better. That big honking thing, like they're side by side right now because I haven't gotten rid of the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, yeah, that little thing looks better. Still don't like the overall hotel design, but like, whatever. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, I definitely think it looks better. If you're looking at a PS5 Slim and the Pro, they're virtually identical, as far as I understand from like a dimensions perspective.
Mm,
The only thing that kind of separates the two SKUs is these kind of like racing lines that are on the PS5 Pro. These like black lines in the middle of the console on the top and the bottom are present, so it's a little bit different aesthetically, but yeah, very similar size. What I like the most about it is, so on the original PlayStation 5, the case that actually, the white part, if you're
mm,
just talking about the way that it launched, the way that it looked, those cases on the top and bottom flared out like pretty aggressively,
yeah.
um, and they're much more subtle on this. So they don't look like, I don't know, a guy in Miami with his collar popped going into a club or something like that. They are more in line with like the actual, because it's kind of like a sandwich, like the two
Mm,
cases, or the two, yeah, top and bottom panel kind of sandwich the core of the console, and it's a little bit better looking. I had to install a disk drive on mine because that's a thing that you do not get with the PS5 Pro. I think we talked about that. And I'm big into physical media, so that was like a must for me.
I didn't realize it installs. It's not just like a plug-in sit next to it type deal. It's like
Oh yeah.
it like hooks onto it in
Yep.
some way.
Yeah. So you pop off the bottom panel, and then they're not. This isn't, I guess, like if you have already purchased a disk drive, you're kind of shit out of luck, because for piracy reasons, once you kind of pair a hard drive, or a disk drive, I should say, onto the console, it's just on that console forever. Like you can't pull it off and put it on another console, right?
Oh, interesting.
And I believe that's for like piracy protection. So once it's on there, that's the only console it'll work with, as far as I understand. I'm sure there are like workarounds if you're smart enough, but
Sure.
um, yeah. So you pop off the bottom panel, and then there's just like a port that you kind of slot it into. And it's pretty seamless. It's pretty easy to get it on and set up, but it does look a little bit goofier with the disk drive. Thankfully, the disk drive comes with like these feet. The console itself comes with feet, because they got rid of that god awful stand that came with the base console that kind of clipped onto the back. If you didn't want to have your console vertical, which I never do, I always am horizontal.
Mhm.
And yeah, you had this like clippy thing that kind of elevated the base original console up off the ground, so it didn't just like flop around. Which I'm like, why would you? Who fucking Mark Cerny? What are you doing, dog?
It's the stupidest
This
thing I've ever
shit's
seen, and I stopped
hideous.
using it. I just let it flop because I was just like, this thing's stupid. It
Yeah,
just sits there. It's
but
fine.
so you can buy if you are a person that likes your console vertical, you have to buy a $30 proprietary stand, or you can just 3D print one if you've got the means to do that, which I would recommend. But yeah, so out of the box, you just get these little feet. But
Mm.
if you install the disk drive, the feet that are in the box don't work, and it'll still flop, right? So thankfully, the disk drive comes with like these other kind of feet that balance it out,
Okay.
and the side with the disk drive just barely floats off of the ground,
Mm.
off of the surface that you're on. So yeah, from that perspective, I think that it looks much better. And my girlfriend, I was like, "Do you want my old console upstairs?" Because right now my PS4 Pro is upstairs,
Sure.
and she was like, "No,
That
no,
ugly thing?
yeah,
Absolutely
no,
not.
no, no, no." So yeah, so from that perspective, I'm happy with
Mm.
just like the overall look. It's cleaner, it's smaller, so happy with that.
So yeah, I got it. I got it set up. I briefly played for one evening, a couple hours. Uh, I wanna finish up Final Fantasy VII. So as soon as I knew I was getting the Pro, I was like, all right, well that's the thing I'm gonna do.
Hmm.
And a lot of the games will have come out, so I'm gonna be playing that game for hopefully the next month, and we'll see what kind of progress I can make.
Hmm.
I I actually did play a little bit about 2 weeks ago of Final Fantasy VII, so I do have a little bit of experience of just kind of like frame rate and how it feels. And I mean, it nails it. The game feels great. It's just no complaints, right? Like it feels really smooth. Feels really. It looks. I mean, it always looked really good. There were complaints about textures and stuff on different settings, but I played for a few hours and I was pretty much like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is great. Pretty happy about my purchase, I guess. Gives me something to do. Glad I didn't finish the game, I guess. And I'll just keep going on that.
Yeah. Well, I finished.
Oh, well, hold on one sec.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry. I did kind of laugh because the first thing I did was play Queen's Blood for like 30 minutes. And I was just like so happy I spent $700 to play Queen's Blood, but
As you
whatever.
should, as you should. You're gonna fire up Balatro next on the PlayStation 5, bro.
Probably.
Yeah. So for me, obviously, I finished Rebirth on the base, so don't really have that to go back to. And I'm not really super concerned with like comparing and contrasting games. You know, there
Sure.
is a pretty lengthy list of out the box compatible like upgrades right out of the gate, mostly first party Sony titles, with a couple of games that have just released very recently that have performance upgrades. For me, the game that I tested out today, and we won't talk about it in detail yet because I'm like 3 or 4 hours in. But Dragon Age: The Veil Guard was the game that I chose because it does have a PS5 Pro enhancement. And what I can say from the 4 hours that I played is it runs and looks fucking incredible.
Nice.
Really,
Good.
really nice. My TV can't output to like 144 hertz like my monitor
Sure.
can. Well, my monitor can do 240, but so it's just a 60 hertz television. But I would be shocked if it wasn't just running at 60 the entire time. It looks great, and just is gorgeous. So immediately, I don't have any point of reference because I haven't played Vilgard on the base
Sure.
PS5. But it looks very nice and immediately noticeable where you kind of expect that on like a big TV for things to kind of run maybe like 30 to 40 frames. Uh, it looks great. It looks great. So that's heartening to see. But realistically, I mean, this is for me, and I'm sure for you as well. I mean, I know you have Final Fantasy, but this is just future proofing. Um,
Well, and it's like uh what's coming out next year. GTA doesn't go to PC
right.
first. It just won't, which is kind of crazy, and that's still a thing. But
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna be playing it, and I don't have high hopes for how that would run on a base. I don't know if I have high hopes for how it's going to run on the pro just because of their track record.
Yeah.
But I absolutely want it for that.
Red
And
Dead ran
then
pretty good on the. Well, I guess I had a pro at that point in time, but it ran pretty good
it
on the
did,
pro.
that's true. But then, we're rolling into next year and we're probably gonna, we have Ghosts of Yotai. Is
Yep,
that the name?
Yotai.
And
Yeah,
then, you're gonna hear from the Naughty Dogs and the other
yeah,
guys out there, and you're gonna start and get some other of those heavy hitters from Sony, where they've got probably 4 titles that aren't announced that I feel like we're gonna know about within 18 months.
100%.
And we're gonna start and be like, cool, I'm really happy I have this.
They just announced. Sony just recently announced that starting in 2025, they will be releasing a major first-party title for like the foreseeable future.
Sure.
So every year, right?
Mhm.
And maybe a couple a year, which is good to see. So I mean, obviously they took this year off pretty much. Like we're just going to take this one off. We're going to sit this one out. And aside from Astrobot, which is a fantastic game, but yeah, I think in 2025 there's going to be some heavy hitting Sony first party titles that will absolutely utilize the newfound power around. Like Digital Foundry did like a test, which
Sure.
they're pretty good at doing these tests, and they're basically saying that it's around a 45% increase, which it's like 45% is
It's a pretty big
not
number. Yeah.
insignificant, right? So yeah, we'll just have to see how it shakes out. But I don't have buyer's remorse. I mean, it is like $700 is a lot of money, but like for what we do with the podcast, there was like no question that I wasn't going to buy it. And so yeah, we'll just have to see how it shakes out. But hopefully we get some really cool games that can utilize the extra power, because having these beautiful, oftentimes beautiful games running at like a very high frame rate on a big TV while you're sitting sipping a drink on your couch is pretty appealing to me.
I'm having a hard time doing that, man. Even I know what you're saying, but my computer's right next to my big TV,
Yeah.
and my monitor screen is that ultra wide,
Mhm.
and it's just it's a I play the PlayStation on that monitor, and I'm pretty happy with it.
I get
And
it. I've got a
like,
ridiculously nice monitor too, and a ridiculously powerful PC that makes this PS5 Pro look like
mhm,
mid. I don't know, like just
sure,
obsolete essentially. Uh, but there is something I do really enjoy playing games on a chair at my
sure,
desk, but there are certain types of games that I do not want to sit in a chair for.
for sure.
One of the games we're going to talk about today, if you were to say, "Hey, you want to play this game for as long as I played it in a chair at a desk," I'd be like, "Fuck no!" But laying on a couch with my dog hanging out, a little bit more appealing.
All right. Well, let's get into it. We can talk about the order of games here. What do you want to do? You care?
Whatever, man.
All right. Let's it's fresh on my mind, so I want to talk about Diablo. Um, it came out a couple weeks ago. Actually, more than a couple weeks ago. This is the Vessel of Hatred expansion. This is the first time Diablo has released that I haven't played it day and date since Diablo 1. It's the only expansion that, like, the day it came out, I didn't play it, which is kind of interesting. But it was out, and then it, had good reviews, and I had kind of been somewhat paying attention to just where that game was at, and I was hearing pretty positive things, and I was like, obviously I love these games, a lot of history with them. I gotta go dip my toe in here and find out what it is, and boy, am I glad I did. So they have a new class, and I hesitated because it's a brand new season, brand new character, and I usually only just play the sorceress lady, but I was like, I'm gonna try the new class. I've heard it's OP,
What's the name of it?
Spiritborn. I think it's like a mixture of a witch doctor and not a necro. I don't remember what the other, like a monk. Um,
Okay,
but
that's a weird mishmash.
so you're basically, you got a lot of mobility, and I really like it. Part of the reason I always like the sorceress is you end up with a teleport that you can get away. And when you and I played, and we're doing like
Helltide or
the
whatever the fuck it was.
well, whatever that capstone dungeon that we were trying to do, where
Right.
you and I were doing it forever,
Yeah.
there were certain things that was a big deal for me because you didn't have enough dodges.
That was a big deal
but
for me. What do you mean?
it was a big deal for me to get away. Obviously,
Oh, I see what
were
you're
going
saying.
through some shit.
Yeah. God damn it.
But a few things right at the top. I just need to report, like, this character maybe is the character for you, because the current build is called like the Quill Volley, and yeah, I got a teleport. Like, I turn into an eagle and fly over there and do some status effects.
Mhm.
That's fine. And then I have my ultimate, which is essentially a similar thing, but you turn into a jaguar and do a ton of damage.
Okay.
But you can just click anywhere on the screen and do it.
Mhm.
So you can get out using that.
Mhm.
And I have 7 evades. You remember how stingy they were, I guess, with
Yeah.
the evades? I have 7. So I can do most of my movement without walking. And it's pretty exciting.
I love that
And
they ditched that immediately. It only took them like 3 seasons to
like,
be like, everyone hates the fact that mobility was
it's
like
like,
completely nerfed from Diablo 3.
and I can't speak to the other. Technically, I can't say the other classes, like, because I have got some gear and things that change it, but I have an enormous amount of mobility, and
But
this
that's got to be like a clear answer,
probably,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because people need it, and you have these bosses where you need to be able to dodge. It was obvious, and uh, this character is an enormous amount of fun. It is a extraordinary amount of fun to play. I'm pretty much hooked. But the thing is it's all pretty smart. Like, you can start it up, and you're like, you want to skip the main campaign? Absolutely. Just go right into the DLC. DLC is pretty. If you played Diablo, you know what you're getting into, right?
Hmm.
I like the dumb stories in these games.
Hmm.
I was super into Wolf Mephisto. I thought he was cool in the first one. He's cool in this one too. And I'm pretty excited about just where the whole story's going. And I was talking to you last night. It's pretty clear that they're not done. No Diablo has ever gotten more than one expansion. There's no way they're done. They're just laying the groundwork, and they've got a great base here. I don't see why you wouldn't do. I don't know how fast they can make them, but if I wish it could be one a year, right? Just, and they've got enough people, enough prime evils that you can really go through Bale and Diablo, and you could be still releasing and building on this game in 3 years. And I don't really see a problem with it because they've expanded the end game and expanded the activities. Like it was pretty limited in the first one. You had some world bosses, you had nightmare dungeons, and then you could do hell tides, but it was like it got a little too samey.
Mhm.
There just wasn't quite enough there, and they've just slowly built that out. I can't specifically list everything because some seasons added a few things, but at this point, there's probably four more different dungeon type activities you can do, like a horde mode type where it's just going to be you got to do 10 waves and they're quite difficult.
Mhm.
And then you get a bunch of currency and like you get through I'm trying to remember what that one is fucking called, but infernal hordes. You get through like the 10 waves and you beat the final boss and you've been getting this currency as you play, and then you can go shopping with the currency you got in that dungeon. And then what I really like is, say you have 200 of this currency and 150 gives you a sweet chest, you get a bunch of shit. You have 50 you can't do anything with. There's these other chests that's like convert the rest of your currency into gem parts or like materials essentially. So you can just turn the rest of it into mats, which helps in a game where you're doing this kind of upgrading.
Mhm.
They've completely reworked gems. Before it was
They needed a
always
rework.
yeah. So before it was like you were stacking all these fucking gems, you had gems coming out your ass.
I had so many fucking gems.
And it was untenable. So what they've done, it's great. It's pretty much perfect. You pick up gem fragments, thousands of gem fragments. They do not sit in your inventory. You have them. They're a list. It's a material you have. You then can go and you can say, all right, I got 10,000 fragments. I can make a flawless skull.
Mhm.
You make a flawless skull. It's great.
Mhm.
You keep going. You can salvage the skull, get all those materials back, make the perfect skull, and you can just constantly only have the gems that you need for your build. If I never use rubies, because I don't, I use emeralds and skulls, I will never have a ruby taking up inventory space. It will
That's
never
nice.
happen in the game. It's great.
Yeah. Inventory space as well. So you say that that's not a factor anymore, right?
Not well. It hasn't become a problem because how you use gems, I mean, just do the math. You're never going to need more than 5-6 gems.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's not in your main inventory. It's
right. That was my question.
It's in a separate tab now.
Yeah.
And it's in a separate tab with rune words, which have been added.
Okay.
They've been in Diablo historically, but essentially rune words is you take 2 runes that do different things, you combine them in 2 slots, and it's just deepening what you can do with these builds. And it's basically introducing a new form of like mana, essentially, because one of it's going to be like, hey, every time you evade, you get 200 of this currency. And then the top one is like, hey, every time you have 200 of this currency, you explode with meteors or some shit. And you're collecting all these runes,
love exploding with meteors,
combining them however you want.
Yeah.
And it just adds a lot of depth.
Sure.
I mean, or suddenly
it's just like a modifier to your build.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And you're going into like when you're going into these builds, you're just like, oh fuck, I didn't even realize I could do this. Which leads me to like my build, which just became incredible.
Yeah.
Like I'm at endgame now. I'm in Torment 2. They've gone back to the Torment. That was difficulty levels they used in Diablo 3. World tiers are gone. It's now back to this Torment thing. But the way the way my build worked, it was quite a thing to evolve, because I had this skill where I threw like 5 feathers out, which were essentially like shuriken type deals. And it did a ton of damage, but used a ton of mana. And so I could throw like 3 out. And then I had to re-get it's called Vigor. They changed the name for every class, but as far as I'm concerned, it's mana. But I'm like, yeah, this is really powerful, but I wonder where this build goes, because I can only throw those out a few times. And then you get further and further. I get into end game, and it's like, hey, when you hit level 60, you get your like key passive, like the most important. It's like your ultimate passive. And what this is it's like, hey, if you throw any ability 3 times in a row, we're going to cut your cooldowns in half. So if I throw 3 of those feathers, the quill volley cuts all my cooldowns in half, even an ultimate. Like, oh, that sounds pretty good. And I'm doing that a little bit. And then I get a little further and it's like, well, I get a unique rod that I needed for the build, like the rod of Klebeck. And it's like, well, this rod turns your skill, this quill volley, into a basic skill that uses no vigor, but it does a little less damage.
Mhm.
So now I have no mana problem. Does a little less damage. But remember, every time I throw it 3 times, cooldown's half.
Mhm.
My ultimate goes off every 5 seconds, maybe.
Mhm.
And it's just suddenly it's just I have almost no cooldowns on all of my, like, I have an armor one, a damage buff, and then the teleport. They're always up. I only have to attack 6 times, and they're pretty much about to be up. And the build's an enormous amount of fun. I don't know if they'll like nerf any of these things to try to.
Did you go to Icy Veins to find this?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Not originally.
Incredible name for a website, by the way.
It's been around forever.
I know.
Fucking,
I know.
Originally I was at a different one, and that was like the leveling build. But then I didn't really like what it was showing me for the end game, and I was like, "Where's just the fucking Icy Veins one?" And that's where I'm now at.
Yeah.
And I'm completely hooked. My favorite part of these games is when I get to where I'm at right now, which is the nitty gritty. I'm not swapping out gear. I have a few of the pieces I need. I'm still looking for a couple rings and things here, and they're just going to make it better and better.
Mhm.
But this build, I'm just really happy with like how this thing evolved and some of the different skills. Like another skill I got on like my helmet specifically for it, like those feathers things go out and come back now, and it's just like this is a it feels like Vampire Survivors. Like there's so many fucking enemies on the screen at times. I was playing today. I was just like, this is just like really good looking Vampire Survivors.
Yeah, we're just living in a post after
basically,
Vampire
it's
Survivors.
like-
Every game in some way emulates Vampire Survivors.
It's they've added a lot more, but I mean the name of the game is that the game was good before, and I think it's a lot better now. And they just have more depth. There's masterwork. There's tempering your gear, and it's like some of the stuff they've added here. It's like when you have the mats to upgrade essentially with a masterwork, you can do it like 16 times or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you do it, your affixes go up 5%. So say your attack speed, you had one for attack speed or damage or something, they'll go up 5%. Every 4 times you do it, there's a chance one of them will go, or there's not a chance, one of them will go up 25%. And then suddenly there's that random RNG where you can see people would be like, they need to keep getting the same unique weapon and then trying to hope that the right affix gets boosted 25% because you could get yourself into a situation where you would have a really unique weapon that not a lot of people would have.
Sure.
Because of the RNG there, you're just like, yeah, this thing fucking puts down the paint.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very happy about it.
Good.
It's a great game.
That's awesome. So a couple of things. So going back to your statement of whether or not they can make one of these every year, they cannot, Nick. I
Okay.
I just finished reading Jason Schreier's
Oh,
book.
you read it?
Yeah, I read it. I think it's called Play Nice or something like
Something
that.
like that.
And anybody that doesn't know, it's basically a rundown of the entire history of Activision Blizzard before it was bought up by Activision. Fascinating read. I highly recommend it. I'm not a big fan of Jason Schreier. I think he's pretty polarizing in a lot of ways.
It's kind of a dick.
He is a bit of a
It's
dick.
just-
But I will say that he's an incredible writer and he does do his due diligence. And I've read Blood, Sweat, and Pixels prior to this. And on my last trip to Maryland, I finished up the new book. And it's fascinating kind of look into kind of the inner workings of Blizzard over the years. And, you know, how they kind of became essentially like the Pixar of the video game world, but also a lot of their failings and mistakes that they made along the way that it's kind of put them in a kind of precarious situation now So yes, and that was one of the things that the reason why I say they cannot do it is during the Kotek
Yeah.
period of time, he was really pushing for that exactly what you just described to happen.
Call of Duty model,
Well,
basically,
yeah,
right? Like,
yes, exactly. That's his model across the board is just to maximize profits and make something every single year. And internally at Blizzard, they just were not able to do it. They could not keep up with the pace that the overlord, so to speak, wanted for them. And yeah, so it's an interesting read. Very much highly recommend it. Good book, good book. But anyway, so there's that, and then the other things that I wanted to kind of talk about is the secondary question. I have just invested 500 hours into Destiny this last year,
hmm.
right? I'm not exaggerating. Like
So yeah,
I looked at my hour counter and I'm just under 500.
shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, yeah. So my question is, do you feel like this is that where it's like there's enough here now, and obviously it's not the fairest comparison because we're talking about a game that has had literally like 5 to 6 years of runtime up to this point to get to the level of content that is present in Destiny right now. But do you feel like the foundation is at least there where you could feel yourself or see yourself investing hundreds and hundreds of hours into this? Or is this more just like, I probably put like 50 or 60 hours and let it bake in the oven a little bit longer and wait until the next big
I
thing?
I would love to like finish out this season pass, which is all cosmetic stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm at like 30 out of 100 or something like that. And this is they've taken a lot from Destiny. They're aware that Destiny exists.
Hmm.
They scratch different itches. Like I get that they're both loot, but like Destiny goes a little more complex, and this one is really, if you had a rough day, you can just do any activity, right? And if you
Yeah.
and if you're in a bad headspace, Destiny, you can't do all of it because some of it is fucking. You need to be on your game, right?
Right.
I will say that there are they added a dungeon called the Dark Citadel, and there's three different areas, and it's a weekly reset.
Mm.
And there are, we will call them raid mechanics. They are pretty light, but we are talking about like auto like wipes.
Mm.
Hey, we didn't do this. We didn't kill this thing in time. We didn't go get this uh, head and bring it back and put it on here in time, and we wiped and we had to do it again.
Mm.
And it felt pretty good in their way. It's not anything crazy. We wiped a couple times and then I got it and got the rewards,
Hmm.
and that all feels good. I think that this is a thing that you could enjoy. I don't know that it is 500 hours and I'm having a great time. I don't think I would need 500 hours. I'm not the type of person that when I finish Destiny, I don't want to make another character. I've never been like that. Um, I don't want necessarily like I pretty much quit the Diablo the last time once I made a new character.
Hmm.
Played it for a few hours and I was like, well, I'm kind of done.
Yeah, that's the
So
fundamental issue that I have, and it has been. We talked about it when the game came out last year. That just does not compute with me.
yeah,
I cannot for the life of me invest 100 plus hours into a character and then when the new season comes out just be like we're starting fresh. It
it
just does not work for me.
it I've come around a little bit in that I like this character, but
Yeah, but at the end of the season, you're having so
it's
much fun,
it's
and then it's
over.
like my build is
Yep.
where I want it to be, and I just want to kind of build and continue to like tinker with whatever nerfs, buffs, new content that they filter into the whole ecosystem, and then it's just like no, you start from
It's just
scratch.
not how this thing's meant to work, and I'm not really the guy that will be here season and season every season. But I might be the guy that comes in a year every year
Yeah,
or every a little longer because I also haven't played every class, so
sure.
I still have depth. I can still come play a barbarian. I've never played one.
You should play the
Uh,
rogue. Have you
it's
played the
like
rogue? The rogue is a lot of fun.
so like I can keep bouncing back and probably have a pretty good time. And they've really streamlined it. They made it pretty fast. You
Mhm.
can get to max level quick. We're not.
Well, you have to.
Yeah, yeah.
That you have to do that.
It's down to 60. You get to 60, and then the paragons open up.
I'd also
Uh,
argue that you need to severely increase the item drop rate for like really good builds, right? To get you to that point. Like
oh,
you don't want it to just be like a shower of loot all of the time. But I feel like if you're gonna run some sort of consequential content, you should at least get something that is relevant to your build
so
fairly often in this model, right?
and my thought about that was because I was worried, right? Like, because if you're hunting for stuff and it's build specific, it can be a problem.
Yeah.
And my weapon, that rod of Klepek, is critical because it is the thing that turns your vigor using skill to a core skill that doesn't use it. That's key to the whole thing.
Hmm.
And I literally hit end game, I'd finished the game, and I was like, well, let's finish the campaign. I'm like, well, let's see what the end game build looks like. Said, you got to have this. I looked at the loot I'd gotten from the last boss and I had it. And I was like, things are coming up, Nick. All right, great. That helped a lot because I just immediately was able to enter it. I was missing
Things are
uh,
coming up, Nick.
I was missing a few items that helped with getting my vigor up to once it's at max, it actually helps. It's a little more complicated than I've fully explained, but and I've been working on some of those. I got one of those rings today, and there's a few other things I'm still trying to get, but it has been pretty good. I feel like it kind of knows in the back of its head, like what I want. And I think they have always done it with Diablo 4. They didn't always do it in previous ones. They're pulling a lot of levers. You used to get shit that was just straight up not for your class.
Mhm.
And that is almost, that just doesn't happen. I got one random shield that wasn't for my class from a quest, and that was like the only one. And I couldn't even salvage it. So I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do with it. It's just like in my trash can. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Uh, so I've been pretty happy with all that. The Paragon boards are pretty much all the same. Extraordinarily daunting. I don't know how or why anyone would try to do that manually and not just like go to the internet and be like, what is the most efficient boxes I check? But
It's just so big.
it's huge. It's
Yeah.
absolutely, I mean, it reminds me of Grim Dawn with their galaxy thing that you were just like,
Yeah.
holy shit, like
Yeah.
what is all this?
Path of
It's
Exile is even
for
more
sure.
insane. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like the depth is here, and there's more depth than when they release the game, which is what you do.
Mm.
And at this point, I mean, I want to keep going. I see where I get. I haven't fought like they have like 6 end game bosses, not like the world boss things. And you, as you do different activities, you get materials to summon them. And I probably have materials to do it, but I haven't actually done it and one of those activities yet. So I don't know if that's cool. And I think that's about the only thing I've done. The one thing they do when I was talking about how they obviously know that Destiny exists. What's it called? Like Destiny has like that book that you keep doing challenges, then you move to the next level. What?
Yeah, the artifact. It's a
So
seasonal
yeah.
artifact.
So essentially they have that, and that's like it's like story pro. It's not, they call it like the story, like you're in chapter 3.
Hmm.
There's no story. It's not what it is, but it's the same deal. And you know, the first chapter was making sure you had got talked to all the people that do the different events and kind of introduced you. Then you move to 2, and then it's clearly just working you up into end game, but you're getting pretty good rewards as you finish those off. So you actually really want to do it because some of those, as it gets higher and higher, besides getting like sweet names next to your name, it's or sweet titles, it's also pretty good gear that will be random. So
The artifact is the smartest thing that Bungie has rolled out, and I don't know
mhm.
how many seasons they've been doing artifacts, but the artifact literally shifts the meta every single season, and I
Yeah,
think that that's so important, right? Because it's like one season there's going to be a lot of buffs to, like, say, sniper rifles. This was the last season there was a
got
lot
it.
of buffs for sniper rifles, whereas like you're just like sitting there being like, these sniper rifles that I have suck shit, and then it's like, okay, well, the artifact is going to give you, like, tangible buffs to sniper rifles, right? And
Mhm.
then that starts to work its way into the meta, and then people are just constantly using sniper rifles, right? So it kind of shifts like that, and I think that's brilliant. I think that's a really smart thing for like a live service looting
Mhm.
heavy game to kind of have, because things that you're looking at the overall loot pool. I'm just using Destiny as an example. You're looking at the overall loot pool and you're like, this gun sucks shit. this thing's fucking terrible. And then they bring out a new artifact and it's like, this gun's great. This thing is fucking insane.
Sure.
So I do love that. And so
Sure.
that's a cool thing to see. I think it's a really smart thing. And it's a fairly easy thing from like a development standpoint where it's just like, well, we already have the content here. Let's just turn the numbers up essentially on the back end to make some of these things that are not viable right now for high level content. Now it's automatically or immediately viable, right?
Sure.
So it's cool.
Only a couple other things. At the end of the campaign, Diablo Blizzard always has really good looking cinematics. They've done that forever. A Diablo game is a Diablo game, right?
Yeah.
But there is that last kind of little area that you're going through. It's like the only way I can describe it is like when Moses parts the Red Sea, like water's coming up the side. And
that historically accurate event where the sea got parted. Yeah,
okay.
Everyone knows that happened.
All right, so if you're gonna reject that, so in Moana, at the end of Moana,
okay, yeah, because I've definitely seen Moana.
Anyway, the water is just curling up, and you're walking through this area and fighting enemies, and like visually, even from a top-down Diablo, I was like, this is super fucking cool, and it really looked awesome, and I was impressed.
I'm trying to think of how that would work because it's like, is it just one long hallway?
Essentially, I mean, it's a little wider and it turns and everything. It's essentially just all of Diablo is just dungeons where you're making a bunch of turns.
Yeah.
Now there's just this water on the sides and it just looks really cool.
Got it.
And we're used to dark dungeons. And I was like, so whoever came up with this was a sweet idea. And then the only other thing, which is just the story, I get it, it's not a big deal, but where the fuck's Tyrael? He's like the huge part of every game. He's still not here.
Didn't he die in the last one? Didn't they kill him?
They all fucking die. What are we talking about?
Did he die in this one? No, he died in 3, right?
One. I don't think he died. He lost all. He like got kicked out, and he was like ostracized. But they mentioned him that he's in Diablo 4 in the base game. There's some notes you can find that's like, oh yeah, he's off doing some stuff, and it's just like, what stuff? There's so much stuff going on here.
Stuff.
He should be here. Why is he? So I can't imagine that they don't have a plan. And it's just because I have a lot of fondness for it because of the cinematics.
Yeah.
And the cinematics that he showed up in Diablo 2, it was just like, this dude's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And I've been waiting and waiting. He's not here. And
Schreier talks about that in the book, their CG department.
Oh my God.
and it's really fascinating. And like one of the reasons why they became as successful as they did, as fast as they did, and like just how organic that whole thing kind of rolled out back in the day and like the Warcraft days.
I loved them. It was
really interesting.
Literally
industry standard.
A huge reason why I like playing those games was when I finished like the chapters or the acts of Warcraft and Diablo. They would have some sweet video.
Diablo and Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is in the same.
Yeah, for sure.
Where it was just like, this is the future. Yep, this is the future of what video game I'm going to be playing. This will be gameplay in 10 years. And then it wasn't. That's just like not understanding how CG works. But at any rate, it's fascinating, and you should read that book. It's good.
All right, I will do that. Well, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We talk about some Call of Duty, Metaphor, who knows what else. Okay, and we're back. We got some really good games coming out that we've been playing. Metaphor
ReFantazio, which is maybe one of the worst names ever. It's really bad.
Yeah,
it's like up there with like Octopath Traveler, Diofield Chronicles. The list goes on and on.
For sure. It should be known that this is I believe Sega and
yeah, so it's Sega and Atlas.
Sega's had a great year.
Sure.
Like Sega's had a really good year. You have played an enormous amount of this game. I have played 10, 15 hours of this game.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to go with this?
Yeah, I think we just talk about it. You'd starting with like you said, it's Sega and Atlas. Studio Zero is the studio that is responsible for it. And I didn't know this. But essentially, under the umbrella at Sega, there are 3 or 4 studios that all work on Shin Megami Tensei games,
Hmm.
and so they kind of alternate, very similarly to the way Call of Duty alternates
Is
their
this
projects.
considered a Shin Megami Tensei game?
No, but I don't think so. At least it's
Oh, yeah.
not on any of the packaging or
But
like.
Persona is.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. At least originally it was,
Sure.
and they've kind of shied away from that. But, anyways, yeah. So they have 3 or 4 studios that are all working on, not actively, but they kind of like
Sure.
alternate, right? So this is Studio Zero. The other one that's like very famous is Studio P, which just released the remake of Persona 3 this year as well.
Got it.
So Studio Zero is the studio that was responsible for Persona 5 and Royal.
Hmm.
So yeah, so the basic nuts and bolts of this is that 3 of the dudes that are responsible for virtually all of the Persona games are working on Metaphor, or worked on Metaphor. Hoshino, which is like the director, and is really, pretty well known. He's
Hmm.
the director. The art director is also here, and then the composer as well. So 3 heavy hitters. If you've ever played a Persona game, you have them to thank for them. So,
Sure.
yeah, Metaphor ReFantazio is kind of a departure in a lot of ways from, yeah, Persona or Shin Megami Tensei, and is kind of this new IP. Well, it is. It is a new IP.
It's a new IP that clearly knows where it. I mean, it has the bones of a Persona game. It has a. I mean, if you've played a Persona game and you play this game, Persona's fingerprints are all over this thing
100%.
in a lot of ways. It doesn't mean that it functions exactly the same, but as you play through it, you're just like, well, if you like those, you're probably going to be right at home here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So initially, and I text you this. I was about like 10 hours into the game, and I was like, "Can confirm that this is fucking Persona, like
Yeah.
high fantasy Persona." And I kind of wish it wasn't, is what I said. And generally, like, I still kind of feel that way, just because. I think there's just like a golden opportunity for these people to put something out that's kind of unique and different, right? And I can understand the reasons why you wouldn't do that, because you've got a tried and true formula that people love. But also, I'm always a proponent of evolving or doing something different, right? And out the gate, I felt that way. I was pretty disappointed that it kind of was just a Persona game.
I read your text wrong. Because you sent me a text, you're like, I can confirm that this is a high fantasy Persona game, something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
I read it and you said you're disappointed. I read it that you were only disappointed that it was high fantasy. So I was like, oh, Jared doesn't like that it's high fantasy. But we'll
No.
see. Because anyway, we didn't like elaborate while we were texting. But I
Yeah.
just read it and I was just like, huh, I don't really mind the high fantasy. He just wants them in school, I guess. I don't know. Maybe he loves the classroom setting.
I love school.
I mean, the classroom, the school setting works really good in those games. So like,
100%.
that's why I kind of just like figured, I was like, all right, whatever.
No.
But you were literally saying, "Oh shit, I'm playing a Persona game." Uh-oh.
Right. And I wasn't saying necessarily because I mean,
Yeah, you like
Persona
those.
4 and 5 are some of my favorite games of all time. So I was excited with the prospect of like going into these, but I also know how much it takes to finish one of these games, the way that I play video games, and this is no different. So a little bit disappointed about that. And yeah, so this thing is absolutely, yeah, fingerprints are all over. Persona fingerprints are all over this thing, right? So you have a calendar system in the same way that you do in a Persona game. And as you play the game, days progress, you kind of have choices that you have to make based on what's going on a given day, whether it's hanging out with one of your companions or what character in the story, which will further their bond with you, which gives you a bunch of different benefits for leveling up those bonds. They have 8 different levels of bond, and the more time you spend with a character, the larger the bond grows, and then they give you benefits. Tons of different benefits for doing that. Like I said, the calendar system is basically the most important thing in this game. There will be major story points in the game where the game will basically tell you you have X amount of days before this big thing happens.
Yeah.
So choose and use your time as you decide. But at the end of the day, there is a deadline to going on to the next big thing,
Right.
right? So that's here, and then the different attributes that your character has, it's charisma, it's intelligence, wisdom, eloquence. It's the exact same thing in the Persona series, where different things that you're going to do in a day, whether it's like, I don't want to spend time with one of my characters to raise their bonds, I'm going to go read a book that's going to
Yeah.
raise my wisdom, right?
Sit by the ocean.
And there are obviously things that you cannot do until you get those attributes up to a certain level. So all of that is Persona, 100%.
Is the I only got through. I mean, it's actually there's quite a bit of game before the first dungeon, and then I got through the first
Sure.
dungeon, and I'm almost to start the second dungeon. But
Mhm.
uh, there's not a lot of characters. Does that expand, or is this a smaller group of heroes that we are playing with?
100% smaller.
Okay,
I didn't count off the top of my head, but you're probably around 20 followers that you can interact with.
no, playable,
Oh,
like
playable
combat.
party, the
Yeah,
party.
yeah, yeah.
No, the party's pretty large. There's probably 7
Okay,
characters.
yeah, because I just had no idea. It just kind of felt. I was just like, I wonder if it's just going to be this ragtag group of like 3 or 4 people, the whole game, and I hadn't really noticed a huge party. Like, I guess I have to look at like the box art again,
I think
but
there's
that's
6. Or no, there is 7. There is 7.
so it's pretty much just like a normal Persona game, but where you're gonna have the same amount of characters, and you gotta decide. Can you only have 3 at a time, or does it go up
4.
to 4?
4.
Okay, because I only have 3 right now.
Yeah.
Going into the second dungeon. Now I was just curious.
Yeah, your party size is limited to 4. There's 7 characters. And yeah, so the game, I'll just say, since we're talking about characters, all of the characters in your party are fantastic. They really, in some Persona games, there are a couple where I'm just like, you suck. Like, I don't want to invest any time with you because I don't like
For
you and I
sure.
don't like your motivations and they just don't care about you.
I
Uh,
never like the male friend, like
mm,
the Yosuke, and they're just they're always annoying, and they're
mm,
always dumb. They fail all the tests. It's like, get
yeah,
out of here. You
yeah.
can go study.
Well, I can say that the character is called Stroll in this game, and he is basically like the male buddy of the
Mhm.
main character, and he's fantastic. Like,
Yeah, I like him so far.
he's got as you're kind of spending time with them, all of the main characters have this overarching story that you're kind of helping them solve and figure out. And Stroll's is fucked up. His is absolutely fucked up. A lot of the characters have pretty fucked up stories that you're kind of unfolding as the game progresses. But Stroll's in particular is like, my parents got burned alive in a fucking building by the antagonist of the game, and it's really rough.
Personas tell a pretty serious adult stories, but
Yeah.
this is more like this is uh the story that they're telling is just for a few years older if you're just going to put it on a graph, right? Compared to like some of the Persona games.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that Persona is pretty mature in its execution, but there is also like, you can't avoid the fact that you're playing as
But
teenagers that are in
it
school.
it just their personas always have a level of immaturity in the character interactions, like between the party. Like that's their whole deal. All of them,
Sure. Yeah, I
three,
guess that's
4,
true.
and 5. They always have heavy stories. That's I'm
Yeah,
not
they're like
saying that
shooting
the
themselves in the head
yeah
to selling their
yeah
personas
I'm
in
not saying
3.
that. It's just they always just also have like these like quirky where you're just like this is just. I always I bring it up because I'm always like, I wish Persona would go to college. Like, I
Yeah.
wish it would just like be a little older,
Go to
or
college.
something. I don't know.
They're
They,
in the workforce. They just graduated from college.
they work at
They're
the plant.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like,
Yeah, no, this is definitely more mature. I mean, this is a dystopic society in a lot of ways, that there are like a bunch of different races that are trying to like interact with one another, but there is a lot of like racial inequity going on, and a large portion of that is front and center in the game. You
mhm.
play as a character called an Elda, which is just a human basically. And then there are other characters, and there is like a serious amount of discrimination against not only Elda but like a lot of different
Yeah,
races in the game.
and that's like right out of the gate. It's pretty discrimination heavy.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
makes it very clear that there's a class system here,
Hmm.
and that people have pretty strong opinions about
Yeah, for sure. And so that's kind of the crux of the story is this
it.
this very inequitable society, and this kind of cataclysmic event happens where the king of this kingdom is assassinated. He's killed, and that kind of puts the wheels in motion of this competition, which is kind of weird. Like the way that it is executed is weird, because it's like the king dies and then he decides to raise the castle up into the sky, and on the bottom of the castle is just his face, and he's like, we're going to have a competition with like all of these
it's
candidates, and anybody in the war in the country can enter,
it's
right, to see who is going to be the next king, right. But then there are also, so he's got some crazy magic, like posthumous magic,
mm,
and so he sets up this competition, and one of the rules of the competition is that major competitors, you have to be at a certain level. If you're at like in
mm,
popularity, you can't be like
it's
assassinated or killed. So there is this these literal, quite literal chains that shoot out of the sky if one of the more popular candidates is
it's
attempted to be killed. And there is like a very serious, important plot point that happens early on in the game
mm,
where the big baddie is going to get assassinated, and these chains shoot out from the sky and grab the assassin as he's trying to assassinate him, because it's like, no, you can't do any damage to him because he's like in the upper crust of the competition. So it's weird, like out the gate, it's pretty weird. And I think that this game has a pretty slow burn to start, I will say, as far as story goes. It takes a while to kind of really get into it and start to, at least for me, it took a while to get really engaged with what was going on, because it kind of makes like, it offends, it does the Japanese RPG thing where they throw a lot of things at you with like the expectation of you to just be like fully understanding everything, where it's
mm.
like, you're throwing a lot at me and I don't know what the fuck's going on, right?
They do this. I I had the same thought, and I enjoyed it, but I'm also like, I like story heavy. But a lot of the Persona games are slow as shit.
Yeah.
Like Persona 5 takes its sweet ass time to ever get into the flow of how
Yeah.
the game works.
Yeah.
You're playing for like 6 hours, 7 hours before you're doing anything
Probably pretty
major.
similar to this, but once it starts to pick up and you kind of get a ragtag group of people with different motivations, and the main character is entered into this tournament to become the next king, essentially, things start to pick up, and you get a airship basically, except it's not
It
an
it
airship.
runs.
Yeah, it runs on two legs, which is pretty hilarious. No spoilers here, so we won't go into anything. We'll just
Yeah.
say that that's how it is.
It's
And
great. I mean, it's really, it is just a create. When I first saw it, I was like, this is some good shit. This is, everyone does the ship in some fashion,
mhm.
and this is just a good way to do it. And it's really fucking dumb. And I was into it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, then you go on this grand quest to all of these different areas, and each story segment is basically split up into, you go to one city, there is some sort of serious event that happens, you resolve that event, then you go to another city,
Sure.
right? And that's kind of how it works, and which is nice to see, because mainline Persona games really haven't had that in the past, where it's just been like, I'm in Tokyo, I'm in this sleepy village, and
Forever.
like the prefecture of wherever the fuck I'm at, and that's really all that there is. With this, you're traveling from place to place, which mixes it up and makes it a bit more variety heavy.
And
Um,
they have a caveat that lets you teleport anywhere that you've been.
correct.
So it's kind of, they're having it both ways. Like you get to go back and uh, still have characters that you're meeting with. Like,
Hmm.
is it Maria or something? That little girl,
Yeah.
and it's a pretty good idea. I mean, has a lot of variety, and you still get all those social links.
Yeah, all the social links are here, and when you start a new day, if you have the ability to talk to someone, regardless of where you're at on the map, it could be like, oh, Maria's. I feel like Maria wants to talk to me, and then it's just like, oh, I'm on the other side of the map. I can just teleport there and talk to her.
Yeah, there's some pretty good UI stuff with that.
Hmm.
I've it's kind of I would like to see that come into Persona. I always was kind of irritated, like I go find this person, where
Yeah.
it's just like, and they kind of did, like they would text you and you could say, I'm gonna come to you right now, but
Mm-hmm.
keep it going, make it as
Yeah.
easy as possible for me to get where I need to go and talk to the person I want to talk to.
Definitely, and it seems like they have realized this. It's a lot of ways, like, not to take anything away from this game, but it feels like this is maybe like a test bed for what they might do with Persona 6 whenever that comes out. And so that's cool to see, right? Because they kind of take some things that have kind of been the way that they are, and
Mm.
like a couple of Persona games now, and expand on it, make it a little bit easier, less time consuming to do things. And I think it's to the benefit of like the overall formula, right? Like, we're trying to drive home that if you're expecting something that isn't, within that framework of a Persona game, you're not going to find it here. But
Unless you will just hate the setting of Persona games,
true.
this is exactly like all those others. Don't bother if you don't like it.
Right.
We like these games here, so
Yes, I do like this game quite a bit, a lot.
yeah.
I love this game. It took me 110 hours to finish it.
It did
Uh,
not take most people that long.
Yeah, I did like
They checked every box.
Well, and the reason why it bumped up pretty significantly towards the end is there is some end game content that is completely optional. You don't have to do it, but it basically tasks you with fighting 4 dragons. And I went into it at like my basic level and absolutely got my shit kicked.
Uh,
And so it required a pretty substantial amount of grinding to get to the point where I could combat these dragons, right? And
mm.
again, it's completely optional, but you have to do it if you want the true ending of the game.
Yeah, I thought 60 hours was the number.
Uh, no,
It sure doesn't
it's
sound
not.
like
It's not the number. It's not the number.
And I
At
usually
least, yeah, I've seen
like
some people do like mainlining it and doing it in 60 hours. But if you want to do a lot of the stuff
it,
here, you're not going to finish in 60.
I have a hard time mainlining these types of games.
Mhm.
I've learned my lesson. I don't use guides for them, so I don't ruin the experience. But I usually tend to follow your path and end up on the higher mark for the amount of hours. Like Final Fantasy VII, right? Like you spent a ton of hours there, and
Yeah.
I'm expecting it's gonna suck the same amount of hours from me
Yeah,
because
I
it
did
took
like
me a
that was like
lot.
100, close to
And
100, maybe
and,
like 80 or 90. I can't
and
remember
I'm
quite.
almost at 60 now, and I was just gauging. I'm just like, I know Jared was at like 100 or something. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So let's talk about some of the things that I think are better in this game, and one of the reasons why I like it so much.
sure.
Inject being a fan of Persona and the way those games work, and then seeing kind of how they have shifted and made things streamlined in a lot of ways. And in other ways, just more enjoyable, right? So the big one, right? So the combat system is largely the same. There is some nuance and difference to it, but like at its core, it is the same combat system that has been present in SMT games for decades now. It's a strength weakness system where you are able to gain extra turns if you are exploiting enemies' weaknesses, and so it's really beneficial and almost required that you are exploiting enemies weaknesses to take advantage and kind of turn the tide of battle in your favor.
The meter works a little different. The interactions, like the skipping your turn to try to save your amount of turns, like that's not something that's been in Persona in that way. Um,
Yeah, there's
before,
differences.
like, well, it's kind of interesting that
Yeah,
they had it because
for
it
sure.
was you can have a benefit like if you attack, it takes one turn. If you pass, it takes a half,
Mhm.
and then you can literally have one character attack quite a few times in one turn
Right.
because of the system. It's just an interesting idea they have
Yep.
that I kind of really liked. I thought it was a fun mechanic and an interesting mechanic
For
where
sure.
you would find out that it's like, oh, this person's got to pass. I've got this one dude that's got the weakness, and we want him to go as many times as possible this round.
Hmm. Yeah, no, definitely cool from that perspective. The other difference is there's like frontline and backline combat. So you can move your characters per turn to the back or the front,
Mm-hmm.
and there's benefits to each kind of formation that you want to run. So typically, if you're in the front row, you usually want like your physical damage dealers to be in the front, because they're going to do more damage in the front. But the reverse of that is they're going to take more damage from enemies because they're closer to the enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And the same can be said for the rear, where like you want your magic users basically to be on the back line, because they're usually not as tanky, but they can pump out a lot of damage from the back line, right? And so there's kind of risk and reward to that. And
There's a lot of strategy that goes to that.
yeah, for
With
sure.
with what I just said about how one character might be able to attack multiple times.
Yeah,
His first attack can be on the front line. You can move him to the back for the second attack.
for
Protect
sure.
him if you know he's going to be up again.
I think that is but I will say I think that is the weakest like addition to the combat. In On paper, it's really cool, and you're thinking like, oh man, like this is going to be really a game changer, and it doesn't really play out that way. Largely, like is like maybe one or two bosses that I can think of, or enemy types that I can think of that really require you to utilize that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's just like I can just plow through this and
And
push through, brute force it.
I don't know if this would like solve it, but in other games I've played that do a frontline backline, uh, the front line is protecting the back line in a more substantial way, in that
Hmm.
you have to go through the front line to get to the back line.
Yeah.
And that's not how this works. They don't have to attack the front line.
Right.
And I think if in a different world you could have had that defensive strategy where it's just like, okay, my healer is safe, my tank's in the front, they have to get through him, and that maybe would have added a little more strategy to it.
For sure. Yeah. So it's kind of disappointing from that perspective, but it's not the end of the world. So the other addition, and I think this is probably the most important and best thing about this game in comparison to the Persona series, is the archetype system. So it's basically a job system that we've seen in plenty of different RPGs over the years. But if you're looking at it through like the historical lens of Persona games, there's just kind of like an inequity from the perspective of the main protagonist and the abilities that they generally have, and then the rest of the party.
It's always
Because,
been weird.
yeah, so the main protagonist in Persona games can recruit personas, which are demons essentially, and all these demons have different attributes that then you can have in your party. So you have the main persona that you get at the beginning of the games typically, that has like specific attributes that you can use, but then additionally you can recruit all these different personas to fill in the gaps, and it works. I mean, it's fine.
Sure.
And then when you get deeper into the games, you're kind of fusing, you're making your personas fuck to produce other personas that then inherent abilities from the two personas that were combined.
But they're all tied to the main character.
Right.
Always.
Whereas the secondary characters are just, they have their persona, and whatever it is, it's like, this is the lightning guy, this is the wind chick, right? And there is no expansion on that. That's just it. That's just the way it is. Does not function like that in this game.
Everyone can do their own. I mean, like you say, it's a class system, a
Right.
job system.
Mm-hmm.
You bring your previously learned things, and you can pick and choose to bring some of them into new classes. So it opens up a lot of variety for all the characters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And all of the characters have different attribute distribution. You can pick how you want to distribute certain attributes to the main character. Not every level that you level up, but like every 3 levels that you level up, it'll give you the option to be like, hey, allocate points the way you see fit. You can't do that with the supporting cast. So they have like inherent strengths and weaknesses based on what the game is giving you. But the strategy or the depth comes from, okay, well, Stroll, he's like a heavy hitting, brawler. So I want him on the front line. And there are archetypes that kind of play into his strength. So you're looking at this giant list, and there it is a massive list. I think so. I think like the base level archetype, I think that there are like 23 to 24 of them,
Mm.
and then of those trees, there's usually 2 to 3 like evolved
Yeah.
versions of that archetype. So as the game progresses, you're leveling up, and then you can move to the next kind of class in that tree.
Yep.
So yeah, so like Stroll, for instance, it's like, okay, well, he starts out as a soldier, I believe, which is like your basic,
Mm.
brawler. But then as the game progresses, a class opens up called the pugilist, right? And it's like, okay, well, based on his stat distribution, it would make sense for me to roll him into the next like damage dealing, like frontline class, right? And as you max out individual archetype, and it's tiered into each individual tier
Mhm.
gives you benefits. So every class has 20 levels, and they're pretty fast to level up. It doesn't take like a super long amount of time, but once you get to 20, then it's like, okay, we're going to give you permanent stat increases to your character stats, and then you can then go and say, do I want to level him up to the next level of the soldier, or do I want to move him over to the pugilist? And that's going to give us different
So
stat distribution that's permanent to the character as you level
so
up
there's a
to
huge
20.
incentive to max out to 20.
100%.
That, like, I mean,
Yes.
that's a big deal.
Yes, and obviously the main protagonist also has that ability, and pretty much everyone online is like, just get him as fucking beefy as possible, and you want him to learn as many archetypes as
Everything. Yeah.
possible because you're getting those permanent stat increases, and that's how you're going to really start to get an OP setup. So yeah, so there's that, and I think that that's a game changer because it realistically, when you're with the way that this game kind of functions and any Persona game functions, it's largely you're doing dungeon crawling, and it's time based. So you have like a deadline. So like I said earlier in the conversation, it'll be like, okay, we've got to do this thing before this date, right? And it usually revolves or involves a dungeon that you have to kind of clear.
Yeah.
There is no requirement to do it in one day. However, and this is just kind of like the tried and true strategy that people that play these games a lot, it's like, okay, I need to do this dungeon in one day's time. So essentially, you go into the dungeon, you do the entire thing, you beat the boss at the end, and then depending on where you're at in the story, I might have 20 days of free time that I can then invest in all of my different attributes and my followers and my everything,
It's
right?
the efficient way to play, and over time, it should make you better in the dungeons. Like, it's just at the end of the day, it's always like you've got to do it.
Yeah.
When I first started Persona 4 on like the Vita, I believe I was texting you, and you're like, you got to do the dungeon in one day.
And it's not easy.
You
It's
have
not
to.
easy. It's hard.
No, that's my biggest complaint about all Persona games is that it's hard because of your magic power, your SP, and that it's a finite resource. There's not a lot of things to buy to like recover it,
Yeah.
and it's really a point of frustration for me in these games because when you really want to do that, you just hit a wall a little bit. Like in this game, you need to be the wizard, the mage,
Yeah,
and
the mage archetype.
and the mage has like a passive that when you're in the open world, they do something a little different in this game where you do a little bit of easy combat. So with kind of just some
Yeah, if you're
shit,
2
like
levels higher than the enemies in a dungeon,
you just kick their ass.
you don't have to go into a turn-based battle. You can just mash square and it will kill them, which is really nice because it gives you all of the benefits at a lesser scale,
Sure.
at least from an XP perspective, that you would get if you did like the turn-based battle. So it speeds everything up quite a bit.
I mean, the biggest problem of the game, from what I've played, and I've only played a limited amount, is that you run out and then you have this mage that can earn it back
You're in
by
1 point by killing one enemy.
by killing one enemy. So you end up running back and just killing this fodder, and it's not compelling. It's not fun. It's
No,
not a good time.
no, it's
And
not.
it literally there's no other way. I mean, I'm assuming there was no other way for you to finish the first dungeon. There's no way for me to do it. I had bumped the difficulty up, but I'm assuming there's just no way that you possibly could have finished the first dungeon
Right.
without having to do that. And this is not new. Some form of this is in all the other games, and it's just like there's got to be a better design, right? There's got to be a better way to approach this stuff because this is not compelling, and they need to just figure out a different system.
Well, they
Uh,
did that. We can talk about
and
it.
it gets better.
It gets much better. Yeah. So yeah, so that's true. Like it is frustrating and it's kind of a bummer. And it's not necessarily that they figured out a better situation, but I wish this is one of the like biggest kind of missteps with the game is there isn't a lot of hand holding in terms of like explaining that you don't need to do it in one day in this game. Whereas like in Persona, you have like such a limited amount of time sometimes depending on where you're at in the story where it's like yeah you need if you really want to max everything out or get close to it in one
Yeah,
playthrough you absolutely have to do these dungeons in one day, right? Which can be frustrating and really kind of isn't a fun time. It requires you to grind a lot. um but with this, the time frame that you have to do things, it's really like very low stakes. And after I did all the dungeons in one day just because it's kind of hardwired into me.
sure.
But after playing through it, like
Was
there is
not needed.
plenty of
Yeah.
time. I maxed everything out, which is maybe the first time without following a guide
Sure.
that I've ever done that in one of these games. I didn't follow a guide in this because I think that just ruins the fun of these games.
Mm.
Um, and I just did it organically and was just like, you know what? I know that I'm not going to max out all of my social links. I'm not going to max out all of my attributes, my personality attributes. I'm probably not going to max out all of the archetypes in one playthrough. I'm just going to accept that and enjoy the game for what it is. I maxed out all the things that I just
Okay.
described
Yeah.
without doing it. So
Sure.
so that's the answer, right? Is it's like from the framing of like if you played these games in the past you absolutely are like, oh, I need to do this in one day. You don't. You really don't. Like there is towards the end of the game, like right at the end, it gives you an entire month where it's just like,
Mm.
okay, you have a month of fucking just do whatever you want. Granted, they kind of like unload on you with side quests and bounties and things like that you can't complete until that point. So you if you didn't do it the way that I did it, you would probably be close to running out of time.
We'd probably be
Um,
all right.
but you're probably going to be okay.
That's
So
it's kind of good to know because it was a pretty big downer as I was playing it. I was just like, I don't know that this is
I think if you
the
stick it,
way.
I think if you stick to 2 days or 3 days, if you have to, you'll be all right. And with any Persona game, it's largely mitigated later in the game because you have a larger MP pool or SP pool.
You
And
you get that equipment though. You get those patches
right.
that it's like I think in five it was like every turn you recovered,
Mhm.
so you could kind of guard and kind of limp through some battles and heal
Yeah.
some guys up and stuff. And you got to a point in Personas after the first couple of dungeons that it was okay.
Mhm.
And I kind of in the back of my head, I'm like, this kind of feels like it's going to be the same, but I don't
Yeah.
know if that actually exists or not.
Yeah, no, it's much less high stakes from that perspective. So I wish I would have known that. When I
Sure.
read online, people were like, "If you want to be optimal, this is the same shit that
Yeah.
everyone says in a fucking in one of these games when you go online looking for help. It's like if you want to be optimal, then you're gonna have to do that. Nobody that I saw was like, "Yeah, I finished this fucking thing, and like you don't need to be like you don't
Like
need
it's
to do it
fine.
in one day. Like you're gonna have plenty of time to max everything out that you want to."
How many
Um,
dungeons are we talking?
uh,
10? 9?
yeah, probably. Well, there. So that's another thing that's cool about this game is there's optional dungeons
Sure.
that you have to run, and quite a few of them.
Like the
So
main ones.
main probably like 7 or 8.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit more than that, but all said and
Right.
done with the optional ones, you're probably looking at 20 to 30. There's a lot.
We should note that the game runs quite well on the Steam Deck. That is the only place I have played it, and
Mhm.
it's really been uh, Nice experience.
I played it on PS5, and no issues. I will say that I really, really hope that, because it's got to be Persona 6, and now understanding, I was a little worried because I was like, okay, this is a pretty big game, and it's like, well, they just released this, and this
Sure.
probably took them a long time before I understood that there's 4 studios that all work on Persona games. So
Gotcha.
one of the studios is probably working on a Persona game while this studio is working on this. So
I think we get a teaser next year. But
yeah, but what I was going to say is that I do hope that there is kind of this is kind of Sega's MMO. If you look at like the Like a Dragon series and Persona, they've been using the same engine for quite a while, and there are some extraordinarily beautiful moments in this game, and artistically it is fantastic. I mean, it is instilling all of the fantastic things that you saw in Persona 5,
mm,
menus, UI, all of that is gorgeous, and beautiful, and highly stylized. But it's kind of at this point in time, it's a little ugly. Like this thing could probably run on PlayStation 3, and the
I don't
and
think that's true, but like,
well, I mean, it's the same engine that they made Persona 5 on, which came out on PS3. So
what?
yeah, yeah,
Are you sure?
positive. Yeah, it's the same thing. They've been using the same engine for a long period of time.
I have to check the tapes. I don't think
All
that
right.
thing. Are you sure that thing hit PS3?
Oh yeah,
Huh.
Persona 5 hit PS3, 100%. Yeah,
Huh.
it came out in the East well before 2016, right?
Huh.
I think that it was. I don't know the exact release date of the Japanese release of Persona 3 or 5, but it definitely came out on PS3, 100%.
Crazy.
Yeah, so it's just like one of those things where at this point in time, it's like you probably should make the new Persona with a different engine. Maybe that would be nice if you would do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, probably.
yeah. But honestly, man, just like in its totality, I think this game's fantastic. One of the better RPGs that I played in a long time. And what really sold it for me is very strong characters. Like I said, all of them are likable. There's one in particular where I'm like, oh, okay, I like you, fine, but her like larger story as you like level up
Mm.
her social link, I'm just like, this is kind of lame. There is one absolutely hilarious aspect of her story that made me laugh out loud, and I was just like, this can't be real. But it is real, and it's fantastic. But other than that, like she's still likable enough. But outside of her, like all the characters are fucking awesome, and they've got really cool stories, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And then the overarching story, man, we were talking about it through text.
Mm.
I think that it maybe does not reach the levels of Dragon Quest 11 in terms of just Dragon Quest 11 lures you into a false sense of security, and you're like, oh, this game's going to end here soon, and then it's like, oh, you've got 40 more hours. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And the story was just really well executed. This is not super far away from that in my book. There's a lot of twists and turns here. There's a lot of like very heartfelt moments, and I there was a couple of sequences where I was like, holy shit, this is wild, dude.
Huh.
The only criticism, or one of the criticisms of the story that I would highlight, is the main character is like reading this book that he is given by basically Igor, if you're familiar with Persona. This dude, his name is Moore, and he's in this like, I don't know, ethereal
Library
space
thing.
in space, and he is basically helps you with archetypes just like Igor does in Persona. Um, and he gives you this book, and it is a story about this utopic society. Is utopic a word? I don't know.
Utopia.
I know it's utopia, but I was like, it's a utopic. It's a utopia essentially.
Okay.
And they're like, there's just no, and it's like the stark contrast between like what's going on in the world that the game
Sure.
takes place in, and the book that they're reading is just like everybody's equal, and it's a democratically elected society, and like everybody is free to believe what they want, and nobody is persecuted or demeaned for their looks or what they believe, and it's a utopia, right?
Mm,
And they kind of fumble the bag with that, I feel like, a
mm.
little bit. And like if I were to like if I explain why it is frustrating to
It's
me,
a spoiler.
it would be a huge spoiler.
Does
But
that have anything to do with the fact that the huge bosses you fight, they're like
called humans.
humans? The
Yeah.
humans are here, and you're
Yeah,
like,
this
huh?
thing has got
Like,
like a lot of vibes of
uh,
Attack on Titan, which is like a one of the best animes maybe ever, in my
mm,
opinion. High recommend. I think you would really enjoy Attack on Titan. You should watch that shit.
okay.
It's really fucking good.
Are there like a bunch of seasons, or is it like
There's like 4 or 5
okay?
seasons, but it's really good. I think that you would like it. You should watch, like, go find it on streaming
Sure,
service.
sure,
Watch the first couple of episodes. I think you would be like, this is absolutely my jam, and I am very much into it. But yeah, there's a lot of Attack on Titan vibes here, and yes, these major enemies that you're fighting are called humans, and there's not really like a lot of explanation. There is. It's explained. That's
sure.
explained. It takes a long time for it to be explained, and the way that they
You can't
explain,
do that and not have something.
yeah,
As soon as it came out, and it's like these clear they're monsters, and they're just running, and they're like, the humans are here. I was just like, we're gonna go some places with this game.
Yeah, we're definitely they definitely go places with it. I don't think that it is the human aspect of it. It is not the biggest part of the story,
Sure,
but it is explained and it makes sense. And you're like, okay, yeah, I get it, I get it. But yeah, the whole story, the story that the main character is reading throughout the entire game, I don't know. I am a big fan of the place that is like highlighted here, and I'm really struggling to not spoil things here,
gotcha.
but it's also like this is not a utopia. Like,
Like they go off the rails.
I don't know if it goes off the rails. It's just not
Mm.
factual. It's just like it's
Right.
not like it's the furthest thing from a utopia you could possibly
Uh,
imagine. So yeah, so from that perspective, I think that it fails. But other than that, dude, from a story
well,
perspective, I think it's fantastic. I highly recommend that you finish this game. If it takes you 2 years,
to
I don't
just do
care.
it.
You got
You're
it. You got to finish it. I think it is one of the best things that this that Atlas has put out and Sega's put out in a long time, and that's fucking saying something because Sega, is up there with Capcom in just putting out a lot of really good stuff. And this is going to go down as one of the better JRPGs from this group of studios by far.
well, it's my main Steam Deck game, and I mean, I've enjoyed it quite a bit. You did not touch a huge controversial point of the game.
What?
You can't date these people. There's no dating in this game.
Yeah, I don't really
Are you
care.
pissed? How
No.
mad were you when you found out you
I was
couldn't date
not
it?
mad at all.
Okay.
It didn't take away from
Okay.
any of
Okay.
the like
All right.
the like
I
genuine bonds that you create with these
I
characters.
I actually am on board because I feel like if you're gonna do a dating sim, I don't like how they do the Persona ones. I think it's kind of like all kind of dumb. Like it's just not. There's not enough impact in your choices, and I've kind of complained about it in the past. Right,
Sure.
like you would max out a social link, and you're like, you're the greatest thing in my life. All I want to do is hang out with you every day. But we've kind of reached the peak. And for the next 3 months, I'm going to be hanging out with Tyler because I haven't reached the peak with him.
Yeah.
And you're just like, well, is she mad because you haven't been anywhere? Like, anyway, I just wish there was
I
like
largely agree with you.
a better. I wish there was a more dynamic system, and I don't know that we're ever going to get it, but I want like a social link system that's fucking dynamic, and the branching paths are
Mhm.
really extreme, and
Yeah.
that immediately 1 month in, 2 month in, 2 months in, you are like
Hachiko's pregnant.
mate. Well,
We're
you're
moving fast around
you
here.
like within the first month, you are making it so that you cannot see other links
Mm.
because you've gone down a certain path, and that's what I would like to see.
Sure, but that would fundamentally like it would and I don't disagree with you. I think that this is one thing that I will say. Well, sidebar here. I agree with you with the dating things, except in the rare occasions where you are fucking a 40-year-old woman when you are a 16-year-old boy. That happens a couple of times in Persona where you're like, I'm going to go to the
It's
doctor and get some pills. In Persona 5 in particular, you fucking date this fucking hot goth chick that is definitely in her 40s. And you're like, I'm sick. I don't feel well. And it starts out innocent enough, and then you can fuck her.
Which
and
Persona is it where
Persona 5 is where the goth doctor
which
is.
Persona is it where your teacher is also a cleaning lady at night? I think
That's
that
Persona. No, that's 5 as well.
Is that 5?
Yeah.
Because that was also creepy.
You can fuck her as well.
They're not fucking in these games.
Dude, no, I'm sorry, bro. They're not coming out and saying we fucked. Like, it's not that.
It happened in between.
But there is so much innuendo that alludes to them fucking that, yes, trust me. Okay. You go down the road of both of those characters that you just highlighted, you're fucking them. You are absolutely fucking them. With the teacher, you get preferential treatment.
That's true.
Where she's just like, I'm going to give you an A for that good dickin' that you gave me. I don't. That's my one sidebar there where I agree with you, but let's keep the
absolutely ridiculous shit in there. Yeah. Absolutely, because it's always with non-playable characters. Like, it's not with your party. It's just that you're always just like, I have a weird relationship with this person, and what is the deal here? But
yeah, yes,
shit's very funny. This game is pretty awesome.
It's awesome. I highly recommend it. But this will close it out with this. I feel like I spent a lot of time with this game, and I love these games. I absolutely love it. But I have a tolerance point where I'm like, I do not want to play 100 hours of another one of these games anytime soon, right? And so hopefully they, 2026, maybe we get an announcement for Persona 6 next year, and then it comes out in 2026. I'd be okay with that. But if it comes out next year, you better be doing some drastically different things with it. You got to evolve it. You gotta, keep what makes it Persona, but you got to do some new shit. So
I don't think we see it next year. I think we see a trailer next year, maybe, and that's probably it. Long show. We haven't done the show for a while. Are you good for one more? Just keep going. We'll go. Let's do it. You sent me a text and you're like, "Hey, let's do Call of Duty multiplayer." And in my head, I was just like, "Fuck that!" And then in my text, I said, "Okay." So we played Call of Duty multiplayer last night. And so basically, we don't play a lot of these games. We occasionally will dip our toe in, maybe we'll play a campaign. I know you've played more than me, but you and I played some competitive multiplayer, and we played some zombies last night. Funny thing about the multiplayer, everyone knows how this functions. It's kind of the same formula that you're used to, unlocking your gun parts, all that stuff. That's all boilerplate. It feels great. They have a new movement system that's called the Omni movement. And on paper, I think it's a great idea. You can dive in any direction, and then you can kind of lay on the ground and shoot everywhere. And you made the comment while we were playing last night that you were like, I get it. It's pretty cool, but I'm never using it. And I feel like you're pretty much right. There are some exceptions, but I think the exceptions are rare. But I've seen some plays of the game where that were pretty cool. But it is a neat mechanic, and I'm glad that they did it. Like, they should push this thing further. I played a little more today by myself, and a funny thing happened because I hadn't played very much, and you had played a lot, and I had a feeling that your matchmaking was gonna fuck me, but because I pretty much just got my ass handed to me while we played last night.
Yeah.
So I played today. Oh man, it was a good time today because matchmaking adjusted, put me down where I belonged, and I got to play the game, and I was first in one match, and I was like, well, this is way better than last night. What the fuck's going on here? Like, all I got was the red dot on this fucking submachine gun, but I only played like 3 matches, but clearly there was a large difference. And I mean, you've been playing a ton of shooters, so your skill is going to bring us up into a higher class. But man, it was I had a lot of fun today,
Yeah.
and it COD is what it is. There's a lot of criticisms you can throw at these games, but they function well. They
Yeah.
function well, and they are tight. And to go and to play the shooty, it's pretty good. You got to mute that chat. Uh, one match, just one match, and I was like, I have to mute it, and because it was there was only a couple of people talking, but it was enough racism to immediately be like, hmm, no.
Yeah.
And you would think with where we're heading, if they want to, with AI, you would be able to be banning people really easily if you want to.
Hmm.
If most of the players are saying these things, then maybe you don't want to. But I'm not sure where they would
Yeah.
fall on that.
Yeah, definitely the same thing with me. Like when I started playing, I played more of this game than I probably should have.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't know. I'm probably like 20 or 30 hours of COD. This the Blops
Yeah.
6.
I got to like level 15 today or something like that. It's
All
like
right.
not anything crazy.
Yeah, I finished the campaign as well, so that's
Mhm.
where that kind of factors in. And it's not a particularly long campaign; it'll probably take you five
They
hours,
never are.
5 or 6 hours. But yeah, the core of this thing has been good for a while. I mean, they the tree of studios that make these games on a yearly basis, they have nailed down the shooting mechanics, right? And then all of the other mechanics that they choose to bring in or don't bring in the case of like last year's game, for instance, which was panned and no one liked,
Yeah.
uh can elevate it to a certain level, but at the end of the day, like the core formula of aiming down sights, shooting your gun, the movement, it's all good. I will say that the Omni movement has definitely added a new kind of level to this, and the game is still fairly new, so I'm sure that as time progresses, people are going to master the system, and it's going to get crazy. But right now, yeah, like you said, we were playing in some higher tier skill based matchmaking last night. Even at like higher levels, you don't see crazy movement with Omni movement. It's more, there's a slide that's really effective and everyone uses the slide. Rarely am I like, oh yeah,
Mm.
the Omni
I,
movement's gonna work. It's also kind of hard to pull off with the mouse and keyboard, because you have to hit control to get it to work. I mean, you
yeah.
can map it to whatever you want,
It's
but
already on a mouse button automatically.
yeah. Oh, is it?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
it's on. I don't know what numbers they are. The lower mouse button, it's automatically on
Hmm.
that one. And I like that. I don't do control. I can't do it. I have to do the mouse button,
Yeah. Well,
and
that's
it
cool.
works.
I didn't realize that, so maybe I'll try it. But yeah, there are situational instances where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. Like, for instance, if you are in a choke point and there's a doorway and you know that there are two enemies because you have perks that were one enemy behind the door,
Mm.
you just sprint and then spin around and you're probably going to have a good chance of killing them. That's cool. But also you can just hit C and slide through that doorway and spin
Do the
around
same
and
thing.
be just as effective. So it's cool. It's a cool thing. It's nice that they are iterating and making it better from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, at its core, it's just a fun, dumb, mindless experience that it's a good time. Like it's not a bad time, and like the progression system works well enough where you're constantly kind of being drip fed new attachments, new guns, new perks. This is a formula that hasn't changed for 20 years now.
That's what I was gonna say. And I was almost like the kill streaks were cool when they came out with. Did Modern Warfare come out with the kill streaks? Was that the first one or was it before that? But
I think it was the
uh,
original Modern Warfare
I thought so too. But it's just like
with perks and kill
there's
streaks and things like that. Yeah.
the kill streaks are still working the same, and I get it, they're fun, but like there's not really any change except like some of them are lame. Like and I don't know. Doesn't anyone have any ideas to try to shake that up and just make it a little more unique on how you get your helicopter and how you get? I don't know. Like,
Yeah, I think that it's like there are perks that allow you to get your kill streaks up faster, which I like.
I'm gonna die.
We all right?
Yeah.
But at the core, without using the perk, I think that it takes a long time to get like a good kill streak. And there is a lot of kill streaks in this game, and some of them are extraordinarily powerful. Like one of them, you know, the attack helicopter has been around forever,
Sure.
but unless you've got a rocket launcher to take care of it, like I got two last night when we were playing, and both of them netted me like ungodly amounts of kills.
Sure.
And you don't have to do anything; it just floats around, and if anybody's out in the open and on the maps, it just fucking mows people down, and that feels good. It's sweet, but like I don't know, like I think that that maybe is the place that they should probably improve upon. It's just like making it a little bit more compelling with the kill streaks, and the perks need to evolve as well. I mean, the perks have been the perks,
I just
and you know,
I just think 20 years later, like it was a great thing you came up with, but like you should come up with another great thing.
yeah,
You know, you some there's got to be a way to try to push it forward, but
maybe Phil
may-
Spencer can be like, you gotta evolve it, but I doubt it.
maybe. But I mean, this one seems to be. I believe it's getting pretty positive reception. I haven't looked a lot, but I we then played a little bit of zombie mode, and that was a pleasant surprise. Besides being a little directionless and not knowing what we were doing, which would resolve itself with a little more time.
Hmm.
We only did a few matches. It was pretty fun. It was pretty fun mode, pretty fun upgrades, and the greatest narrator announcer that
Since Halo,
has been in, maybe since Halo. It's very good. It's very funny, and I would like to probably play more of that. I thought that was pretty good.
a lot of fun. I played, you know, zombies in the past, um, and it's never really appealed to me. Like
Yeah,
I think World at War was the first time that I played it. That's like way back in the day,
yeah.
and it was just pretty bare bones at the time. There was like a lot of reliance on like let's go to the window and put boards on the window so the zombies are slower to get into the room we're in. Um, and obviously, it's been a long time since World at War. When was the first
I
zombies
believe
mode?
World at War
Was the first
was
one?
after Modern Warfare. I think
It was.
I think it was Modern Warfare, World at War, and that was probably the first zombies because zombies wasn't in Modern Warfare.
No, it wasn't. And then yeah, so it was Modern Warfare, then World at War, and then Modern Warfare 2, I believe. And yeah, that was Treyarch that did World at War,
Yes,
and this is Treyarch again. So yeah, like it is evolved a great deal since back in the day, and it's pretty fun, man. Like there's a lot of learning and kind of figuring out what you're doing. And yes, you don't have much direction. Um, but I just read today that there was like a dude that did like something like 145 rounds of zombies, and like I guess you can save, like quit and save and start again apparently. And I don't know if it's like multiplayer, if he was doing it
huh.
by himself, but there was like an article I read where he like forgot to save it and lost all his progress, and like it made headlines. So
Interesting.
he's like a streamer,
Uh,
and was like very disappointed in that. But like the way that I read that is it's like you can basically just go forever and ever and ever, and it gets progressively more difficult.
there's a good
Um,
there's a good amount of variety. There's a good amount of upgrades in there. It's just pretty fun as a team based PVE, and I really like that style, like division style stuff, where we can go in and just have a good time,
mhm,
laugh a lot, and upgrade our shit and get some good stuff. And it was fun. And I think if we played more, we would better understand what we're supposed to do instead of being kind of lost and get a little better at just not being dumbasses.
for sure. I would like to play some more of it. That was the most fun that I had. Also, your weapons progress, you level them up through zombies as well. I don't know if it's like one for one. Obviously they probably tone down the amount of experience you get in zombies because you're killing a lot of zombies, but I was still getting attachments and different things for guns that I was leveling up
That's
while I was
smart.
using, which was good. So that was cool. All positives from that perspective. I think this thing's fun, and it's like I'll probably hop into multiplayer and play a couple of rounds here and there, you know, in between meetings and things like that at work, just because it's like it's just mindless, dumb fun. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
it's easy to just jump in and go.
So should I talk about the campaign?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah, so I played the campaign. Obviously, Black Ops is, you know, it relies heavily on like this black site,
Mm.
kind of like underbelly of like the government, where Modern Warfare is like
Mm.
more upfront.
Is
This is
Frank Woods in this thing? Is that the
uh
old guy?
I don't
Who's
know. I don't think Frank Woods is
the
in
original?
this.
What do you remember? Like in the original Black Ops, there
No.
was a dude in a wheelchair. It was Woods.
Oh yeah, he is. He is. He
Yeah,
is. Sorry,
of
take it
course he
back.
is.
Yeah.
He has to be in the
Yeah, no, he's
game.
fine. He's all right. He you know, he's basically just a drunk that hangs out.
Might not be Frank.
I
I
don't know.
could have
I
made that up,
Yeah,
but it's
Woods is in it. Woods
all
is in
right.
it for sure. Yeah, so the whole thing takes place in the 90s, like Gulf War is when this takes
Mm.
place. Um and right out of the gate, I was like pretty concerned, because right out of the gate, they're like, Saddam Hussein has a weapon of mass destruction. And I know that was
Like,
Bush Jr.
like, do
that
you have
really leaned into that, which was in the 2000s. But
you have Wikipedia?
yeah, I'm like, oh no, is this like historical revisionism here? Like, I don't know if you know, but they found out that that guy did not have, and like
we went in
fair.
there. They didn't have much of anything.
Yeah,
To be honest,
yeah.
there's a little hole. And we
They
found a
had
guy.
some aluminum tubes.
Like,
Uh,
looking.
yeah, that the Chappelle show, always that skit is like, he's got yellow cake and aluminum tubes. Talking about some motherfucking aluminum tubes. Uh, Anyways, that's how it all starts. Is like, oh well, Saddam has got a weapon of mass destruction, and they're really working on you know, producing enriched uranium, and it's all very bombastic, and you are part of the this black site group of the CIA that's got to go and you know, work things out and stop this cataclysmic event from happening. And so a lot of this takes place in Iraq. There are, I will say that the campaign is fairly varied. It's gotten really good reviews. Like, people that play these every year have said that this is one of the better ones. I personally like Modern Warfare's more, but I could see how you could be like, yeah, this is good, because it is varied, right? Like, I will say that mission to mission, you're doing drastically different things, right? There's an open world mission that is god awful. It is dreadful. It is so
Nice.
bad. It's literally like, you talk to this British guy that's like SAS, and he's like, you got to go fucking blow up these SAM sites. And you just get a truck, and there's like a hub that you can fast travel to like re-up on ammunition and weapons and things like that. And you just get in this truck and you drive around this boring ass desert. And there are these, you know, Iraqi soldiers that are walking around, and you just like have a group of bros in this truck, and you just get out and mow them down, and then go to one site to the next. And it is beyond boring. Like, I could not believe how boring it was. And I think that was the major criticism of the last year's game, was that like they tried to do these like open world environments, and it just didn't land. Same thing here. There's just not a lot going on in that mission. But I will say that's just one mission. There's a mission where, which I hated as well, but it requires you to just like be stealthy.
Sure.
There's a Casino Royale mission where all of the team that you're working with is kind of working in unison, kind of like Ocean's 11, which is kind of cool. It's cool, but like, I don't know, it's very surface level. The level is gorgeous though. The level design in this casino, you're in this Italian casino, it's beautiful, it's really cool, looks great, but like, it's nice variation. There's a lot of variation from mission to mission. Not every mission is just like running and gunning, you know. There's a lot of variation here, so I guess give it credit for that.
Sure.
There's also like a very serious emphasis on like psychological issues, and also like psychedelic use.
Black Ops has always been like that,
Sure.
though, right? Since,
Yeah.
I mean, since the first one.
Yeah, this one really leans into it, and there are 2 or 3 missions where you go on like a vision quest, like trip, which implements zombies into it. So
Yeah.
that's like kind of a smart thing to do, where you're like, okay, this is the zombie mission where you fight fucking zombies, but it's all like in your head. You're like tripping balls on like toad venom or some shit like that. I really don't know what's going on, and it's It's fine. It's fine, but like I don't know, man. I just think it's so surface level. And that's the frustrating thing is because these people are incredibly talented. And I think we've talked about this on a show before, but like this is not a lack of talent issue. These people are cream of the fucking
They,
crop individuals that clearly can make a goddamn good video game. And I'm sure internally a lot of these people are like having a great time and they're probably, making a living for themselves and nothing wrong with that. But also, I wonder how many of them are like, I don't want to do this. Like, I do not want to
well,
make these just like very surface level, like Michael Bay
it's
movie
set pieces.
fucking.
Like they make some of
Yeah.
the best set pieces in the game, and then they have for a long time.
And
But
I
but
get it.
there's no depth to the story.
There
There's no
isn't.
depth
And like
there.
I get it. Like, like most of the people, probably the smarter people at the studio are like, look, you're on a podcast talking about how we need to expand this and it's like and make it better from like a campaign perspective. It's like, motherfucker, like this is all we need to do. Like nobody's coming here with the intent to play the story and then just be done. It's
Well,
multiplayer, it's zombies, that's our bread and butter.
and they play a 5 hour campaign, and other people play 5 hours the first day it comes out in multiplayer,
Yeah.
and then play 500 more hours. So it's just a hard
Right.
sell, right?
I just, but it can't be zero number of people that are in their QB,
Mm.
like making this incredibly detailed environment and being like, what if there was a little bit more meat on the bone here in terms of like a
For sure.
narrative or like, like I think
I
that
mean, like,
honestly should be one of the emphases, and I don't think it will be ever, not at least for a long period of time, but it's just like, this is not a lack of talent. This is just a
I
lack of direction. And the higher ups being like, this is what we want you to deliver on, and this is all you get, and this is what you're going to do. And you also have to take into consideration of just like the way, the cadence in which these are released. It's like you don't have a lot of time. So
uh,
it's kind of impressive from that perspective.
sure. Well, I
They
mean,
can put something this high level out
the
in such a short amount of
the
time.
time thing has always been impressive, but what I'll say, and we've never talked about it on this show, but like Spec Ops: The Line exists, and that's a product that has a lot to say in its story, and had no issues going in a pretty controversial way that a Call of Duty people would probably riot because you were, I mean, spoilers, but like there was, by the end of it you were doing war crimes,
Mhm.
and there was just a lot of coming to terms with what the fuck you were doing
Mhm.
that no Call of Duty has ever
Yeah.
done, and they're not even in the business of it. It's not gonna happen though.
Yeah,
Their
for
main,
sure.
you know what? It's like you can sit there and be like, when's when's Transformers gonna pull my heartstrings and tell a better story? But like, it's not gonna fucking
I
happen.
know, I
You know,
know.
like
I'm
it's
just
not.
saying that, like, you understand my point, right?
Yeah, because it's got an enormous amount of funding and they're operating at a high level, and you would like that operations to be something that's more fundamental.
Mhm.
That's just like there is more tangible. It's just more there. Like, and a decent example, at least, like, I don't know if it's a good example actually, but like the most recent Uncharted, right? Like those games were, they are what they were, swashbuckling stuff. But the last one on the story, they did a really good job on a
Mhm.
game that was essentially an Indiana Jones, which you normally don't get that type of thing, but they were able to do it. And you're
See
like,
Neil Druckmann.
yeah, yeah, of course, right? And,
Yeah.
and you're like, it's a great story on that last Uncharted one, like so that it can be done and still be this action hero game. That's all that is at its roots.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, death and taxes and fucking Call of Duty,
They're
right? Like, I
fucking,
mean, it's
yeah.
just just the way it is. And I'll be interested to see how Microsoft is. I mean, I don't think that they're gonna shy away from Codex, kind of game plan with Call of Duty. It just makes so much money. It prints money. Reports came out that Game Pass saw like a massive surge, obviously.
Sure.
So kind of going as planned from Microsoft's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's going to be an article that's going to come out that's going to be like,
Disappointing
we're
sales.
we're disappointed in this, and we just are not happy, and we're going to close down Raven or one of the
And
supporting studios that helps these games come out.
to be fair, Microsoft's far more likely to say that they're really happy with it and then fire the team 6 months later.
True,
That's
true.
their
Matt Booty will come out and be
their
like, "Everything's great. I love it. We need more games like this." And then the next
2 months
week, somebody will be
they'll
like, "Ah,
close
the
the
studio's
studio.
shutting down,"
Like,
and they just fired 1,000 people.
we closed Treyarch. They're never gonna do it
Yeah.
again. But
Here,
all right,
little spoiler here.
okay.
Saddam is innocent at the end of
Oh,
this, and I'm not saying Saddam Hussein was an innocent person.
okay,
Don't get
great.
it twisted.
Like
The guy was a piece of shit. But also, I mean, just from
the
like a historical perspective, they make it clear, which I appreciate, that in this story, this fantasized story, Saddam is innocent.
Okay, great. I'm glad I know that. Now I can't play the game. You spoiled the you spoiled it for me.
Yeah.
All right, hey, it's a long show, but we had not been here for a while with the mailbag and the Halloween special. We had a lot of games to play while we were gone, so it is good to be back. I appreciate everyone listening. As always, you should probably go and join the Discord. Come and talk to us about games. There should be a link to join in the show notes. And if you go into the bio on YouTube, there should be another link there. That's going to do it. Take it easy, guys.